Thank you, Oros, for the opportunity to spend some time and talk a little bit about our story. I am Carl Hart with Lincoln Laboratory. The title of my talk today really has this foundation of us wanting to put energy into cultivating what we believe is important collective knowledge. And I'll talk more about that, but this theme is really important to us because we do prototype development, and that's a general phrase, but we learn by doing. And we don't build products to sell. We basically take ideas and build prototypes for the first time. And so there's this huge opportunity for us to do better. So today, the talk is broken up into three large areas. I'm going to start just giving you a little bit of perspective on where I come from with the company and how knowledge management is part of that. Move on to a little bit of what is a collective community for us, how are we thinking about this, how we approached it, and talk about some learnings along the way. So I'm hoping this would be useful for everybody that is, anyone that's trying to come up with some tidbits. There are some strategies here. I really like those ideas of the bottom-up approach. You'll see some themes here, but we've done something for the last few years, and I'm going to try to highlight some of the successes, and then wrap up. So Lincoln Laboratory, it's a research and development center that's sponsored by the DoD. We're located primarily in one location out of Lexington, Massachusetts, so it's not too far from here. And our focus as a company is on advancing technology with one purpose, which is related to addressing national security. It's pretty broad. And some of the types of efforts range from space communication to biological detection, and space domain awareness. And so there's these large needs for us to just support that community. So the efforts are often spanning a wide range from technology development at the most foundational level, building sensors for the first time in our microelectronics facility, to packaging them up and putting them through airborne platform tests before we're ready to utilize them in maybe more complex environments such as space. But we have this idea of technology development all the way through these high-level complex prototypes that have this must-succeed type of feel to them. And the span of time ranges between a few months for a rapid prototype up to like multiple years. And so my background is the many years types of programs that have this must-succeed type of essence. And from that position as a payload engineer, I know that having a better way to curate that collective knowledge and maintain it and have a technical memory will help us in the long term. And it really comes down to, we build prototypes, but we have a fundamental need to transfer that into the public sector. And with that, the laboratory is made up of technical divisions. You can see some of their names here are pretty clear. We have communication systems, homeland protection, cybersecurity. And what's unique is that the engineering division, which I represent, is connected to all of those. And so the way that we work is these mission divisions often get an opportunity to bring their idea into realization. And when they want to work to get it realized for an environment like space or underwater, go through design, development, test, analysis, we support them. And so our connection with all these technical divisions really allows us this real nice opportunity to help capture prototyping efforts. What do we know? So we don't have to touch every single mission division. We can just focus on ourselves for now. A few years ago, our engineering leadership team recognized an opportunity to do better. They were hearing about knowledge management. They said, let's learn more. I happen to represent that program, and generally we're looking at what we can do within our division with the opportunity to expand systems, tools, techniques to really do better with our capture and retention and actual use. And that keyword, critical knowledge, means something to everybody here within their organization, but we also have that same issue. What's the right type of information we're trying to capture and use? So this is a multi-year effort, but I wanted to just communicate that we're learning from everybody. My interactions here with people and other organizations is reflected in our strategies. So when I look at the top left, organizations maturing KM practices, these are the big ones that are not software specific, but they really give us some strategies on how to approach. We're aware of the International Knowledge Aware Association, that active knowledge in the workflow. APQC and Gartner both really helped establish strategies around building a community of practice and maintaining it and promoting knowledge. I'd like to highlight that the Consortium for Service Innovation, this is an IT-specific organization that really speaks to strategies for IT support staff helping with a question and answer type of interaction. And you'll see I've pulled some strong themes from this actually for our collective approach, which is actually working really, really well. And this helps because we have people that are advising roles all the time, supporting program teams in that question and answer type of arrangement that speaks to some opportunities to leverage that learning, even though it's IT specific. We've worked with JPL and NASA and many of the companies here. I'm reflecting that I'm learning from you all. Key themes that I wanted to elaborate, because you'll see these moving forward in my next slides. We knew we had to have a stakeholder. We had our division office, but we really got a further stakeholder with our Technical Advisory Council. It's a group of people that the division has identified as technical experts across different domains, and we're utilizing them as one of our stakeholders. We knew we had to start small. We've learned what small means. There's different scopes of small, but clearly defined scope and objectives took a lot of effort, and finding ways to integrate knowledge into how we do work when it's just be done so many other ways is something that we wanted to address, and focus on active delivery and use was important to us. Not having it be a repository, our solution in the end game is to integrate into our digital ecosystem, and it can't be done that way if it's not focused on delivery. And continuously measure use and make visible is this commitment to backfeed information back to our stakeholders to make sure that they understand what we're doing. So there's a whole plan that's detailed here, but this is generally the shape of it. So as I proceed in the next handful of slides, these are major broad steps that we've approached for our collective community. There's stories along the way that hopefully will give you an idea of what we've tried and what we learned. So we knew we had to keep it simple and we had to have a clear purpose. And so when we first started out, we naturally looked within our engineering division and said, we have working groups that are specialized around optomechanics and thermal and structural engineering. And we said, these are great communities to interact with because they were already capturing and sharing knowledge within their environments. But what we ended up finding was that as people started to hear what we were doing, and I'm kind of doing a fast forward here, there's a lot of interest of, well, how do I contribute? I don't relate to those communities. Like I don't attend those, but where do I contribute? Where do I find? And it was really clear that people were interested to learn more, and by not having an easy way for them to interact, we kind of lost people right off the bat, that didn't touch those domains. So what we did is we rebranded, we're the engineering division, and we took this as an opportunity to say, hey, let's consume knowledge packets in those specific communities, but let's bring them into this really explicit, across the whole division, bottoms-up approach. And we ended up really driving home that it was collective. And we'll talk more about kind of business rules exist as recommendations. But once we started this, we realized we started to have a lot more engagement, which is really important. When it comes to scope, we got this a lot from many people, what is knowledge? I can lose a day talking about what is knowledge to peers at work. And it's always a good collaboration, but in the end, we knew we had to define that. So what I'm doing here is we're really saying, it's experience-based knowledge. You can refine that as tacit and any other terms, but when I talk to peers and I try to get the knowledge management terms out of the vocabulary, and I just say, hey, it's our experience. It's the experience of what we know, how to apply that spec or how to do our job. It started to become really meaningful to our community. And I further wanted to make sure that we help them understand that we're not trying to collect knowledge just to build up a knowledge library. That's not success for us. It's if it has a practical benefit to a peer. So we're really starting to speak to like an end user, somebody that you already might be interacting with. And so this is starting to set the scope of experience-based knowledge that has a clear benefit without any layers of management telling you what to worry about. So it's really starting to speak from this bottoms up. Now, when it came to knowledge types, that we know that KPACs, that's a fundamental characterization of those. We really looked at different ways to approach this, and what was really clear to us was create new KPACs that might not exist elsewhere, but really identify clear business use cases. And when we started to come up with some new terms to identify them from PowerPoint charts and other things that might exist elsewhere, we had to come up with definitions that we utilize to communicate and help characterize. And I think this is just a matter of just working with the audience, the people that we're supporting, and saying what could be useful to us. On the bottom right, that is actually a word cloud of our collective community where the different knowledge types, their size indicates the quantity. And right off the bat, the word promising practice, for example, pops up. That means nothing to the community here, but it's a term that we utilized internally to say, hey, as a peer, I think there's a practice that I want to share with you that if we're consistent with, could just be faster for us. And we get this between senior engineers and less senior engineers all day long. They don't think about offering that suggestion, but once we put a place for them to put it, we started to see a growth of something like that, but we had to define that. Additionally, we heard from management that, how do we, what should we be looking at our drawings before we sign off, right? There's no standards. It's experienced people that sign off. They should have a know-how. But through the listenings of the community, we realized, let's just create a final design check. Now we have a thing where people can identify, if I have a final design check, it's a KPAC, right? And now all of a sudden we have a place to start seeding those. And so the power of good knowledge types that we're speaking to our community were really, really important. So we have our community practice, and we started to touch on taxonomy with the knowledge types, but we recognized really off the bat, we had people that were saying we really can't start until we have a taxonomy. And that takes time, it takes money, it takes top-down buy-in. But the reality was we have a support from stakeholders, we had a lot of experienced people working with us. Let's just create something and just know we can improve it. So that's what we did. We really developed a taxonomy that was unique to how we do business, and we really made sure that we tried to make sure they were relevant and useful to the people that were trying to interact as a searcher or a creator. To give you an example, we had a big brainstorming session, and one of the things we said is when someone comes in and asks a question to you, if you're a subject matter expert, usually you need context. And so you start off with, what is the, is it an electrical engineering problem, mechanical engineering problem? You start to have this category of what's the domain. Then it's like, well, what are you trying to do? Are you in the design phase, test phase? So once you start to build up that activity metadata, with categories, you start to drill down. We played a game where it was like a five questions to useful information. How fast can we get? Ideally, it's not 5 questions, but back to 3 years ago when we were setting this up, that helped us think about developing our taxonomy down to the people, the who. And so a lot of the learnings were drive value to the users right away. Don't wait for it. And so when we were looking at audiences, we wanted to make sure that we had a metadata tag that was specific to who can benefit from this knowledge. And that allows for later, faster searching later on for your job role, but it also allows you to identify that this is useful to somebody that's doing a specific job role. And we didn't want to pretend we knew everything. We wanted a flexible system. So, Oros KPACs allowed us the opportunity to use fixed fields metadata and also open. And I can't drive home the importance of once we introduced open field for metadata buildup, it allows us to crowdsource certain things like topics. We wanted to make sure our topics grow. That was a metadata field that we thought we didn't want to control. And we let the community contribute and refine through their collaboration. We've made efforts to really streamline the template, the knowledge pack template, and focus on readability and usability. When we first started off, we were excited about chapters and we were excited about all the metadata. And initial user feedback was, it's just too much. I'm overwhelmed, I don't know where to look. And we're getting that consistently from a lot of people. And so we realized, let's just display defaults that don't have that fire hose effect of information. Let's make sure that the important stuff's at the top. Rather than bury content in chapters, let's drive it up and out so that the important stuff is up in first and foremost. And that really made a difference for people that were trying to quickly absorb, because no one wants to sit there and read. That's not what they're looking to do every day. So we made it faster for them by listening. And then we wanted to make sure that when we started out, we wanted to find exemplars that had a couple characteristics: high reuse potential, but applicable across program boundaries. That was really a priority, and we wanted to showcase the uniqueness of a digital knowledge packet over the document-centric approaches, because we've all heard that, and it's not different here at the lab. Well, we had a great presentation, and that's how we know how to do multi-layer installation, right? But that's a career's worth of information, and it's overwhelming, and it's not necessarily easy to have a conversation about. So what we started to do was look for content that would showcase the uniqueness of these granular knowledge packets and not just be a carrier for a PowerPoint chart. We wanted to avoid a KPAC being a delivery agent for a document. So in one of the NASA books written by one of their chief engineers, it was so clear to me that we had to focus on audience and keeping it simple. And the book's title was Lean Knowledge Management, and I just loved the term so much because it helped us build up a set of how do you interact with a collective community. So at the top, Lean Knowledge Management Practices is helping us guide and instruct people on how they would interact with a collective community. I know we've talked about knowledge management in some of the talks today, but for us, I'm boiling it down for that circular chart on the right. Knowledge management's all about recognizing that knowledge has a set of flow steps. And if any one of those flow steps starts to have any impedance, it just breaks down. So when we looked at our past approaches, where we were doing our knowledge captures and locations, people just couldn't find them fast enough. You didn't really know if it was relevant and useful. We've heard these themes. So a good solution for us with a high value would be to have no impedances in this flow chart. And so what we did is we said, if we're going to start to get people to engage, let's create simple practices that are easy to remember that line up and cover all those. So our collective practices are here, and they're very themed and derivative out of the IT. But I wanted to step through them because I think they're valuable. Because they've grown through interacting with our community. It starts off with demand-driven. So we don't go to search or create just because. The whole idea is that there's a demand that gets you interacting. That's the top. And then we want our culture shift to be, hey, let's acknowledge that there's different ways to search collectively what we know, but let's start there. Like, let's not just jump into creating. We all know that when you're authoring a KPAC, you might be presented similar knowledge that might already exist if you're smart enough and notice, it's there, that you can learn before you save, but we're making it clear, let's just opportunity to learn. Resist perfectionism speaks to our community who just said, I don't have time to do this well enough, and I don't want my name on it. But the reality is, we had conversations with peers and said, you're not thinking about this when you send an email to somebody or when you post something on a team board, a Teams channel. You just are sufficiently providing information to help somebody. When we broke that down, resist perfectionism made the most sense for the people, but that's what it means. Capture sufficiently to help, but don't seek perfection, because the best review happens through reuse. When there's a demand for the knowledge and you're interacting with someone that actually has questions about it and they're trying to learn and internalize, you get that for free. And not only do you get the collaboration by the SME, you also get the benefit of the review. So we've moved in our collective environment completely away from any type of structured formal review, because we found that those are high impedance reviews. They didn't work for us. And by sharing routinely and offering this license to refine, it gave people a little bit more of a pause here and relaxation, because license to refine or modify is to simply flag it or fix it. That's an IT term. But flag it through a discussion if you disagree with it, or modify it yourself. And we're giving everyone the power to do that. And because of change management of KPACs, there's no harm here. In fact, the authors get notified. This has worked really, really well. So we have our community, we have our knowledge packets, we have our practices that get people engaging in collective community. And then we had to recognize that changing behaviors is going to just take time. And that influence is going to come through our coaches. And I'm using the word coach playfully, but it's our champions. It's the people that we've identified to understand those behaviors, model them, and use them as part of their business practices and help us improve them when they don't make sense. And those were individuals who were already having an active interest in mentoring other engineers. So we kind of all know who those would be if we go back home and think about it. That active interest in the success of others starts to speak to a lower burden of them to think about those behaviors and actually utilize them. But they also naturally had time for that in their job role. They're senior engineers doing that already. But we identify that to have coaches and to mentor does require allocated time for coaching. So if you're not one of those people that has that, you will run into issues, and that's why it's one of our learnings to make time for that. So with our mentors, our coaches, and everything in place, we wanted to really expand awareness with those exemplars that we had. And back to, it's the people that you want to touch and help. It's the audience that could benefit. We didn't want to tell anybody this is how you have to work. But when we interacted with them in person or through conversations, through Teams chats, or just through socialization, through presentations, we highlighted advantages. So our collective community is just the first place where you can put your own experience-based knowledge, where you can actually share or retrieve it. That was unique. And while doing that and engaging, it gave them an opportunity to expand their own learning, who else is contributing to similar topics, but also find ways to collaborate. And so we know that learning opportunities in Oros come out from this after the fact, but this expanding learning as a SME is also really important to identify that there's stronger collaboration opportunities than just identifying themselves as a single SME. And then the template of a KPAC has clear benefits, but really simply, it's never not demonstrated a faster time to capture. You just know where to put the information. Metadata fields existing to our community is just already in place. You could utilize it. Faster knowledge retrieval happens. The AI-assisted search was a game changer for efficiencies on our side. Easier sharing and even comparison between knowledge is happening. And through presentations like this, I'm learning about AI opportunities for helping that, even enhancing that, which gets us even more further excited. So the key here, the big takeaway is we didn't tell people to use this. We said, hey, there are benefits to it. Try it out, and then they were able to see. And we went into this eyes wide open, knowing that we weren't seeking perfection, but we learned along the way. And I hope some of my storytelling indicated that there was learning. So this idea that we have opportunities to pause and reflect and adjust, and we put that around the knowledge flow processes as an evolve loop is an important takeaway. We've constantly assessed the quality of how were people finding knowledge, what were they struggling with for identifying knowledge types, how can we improve our communication around these definitions and these KPI types that people didn't understand. And we've made changes along the way to try to address and reduce impedance of all those flows. And it was through listening and letting them know we want to make this easier for them. And along the way, we wanted to make sure that cultivation of knowledge is iterative. It requires adapting, and we wanted our stakeholders to know how things were going, good and bad. And so essentially, we just kept them in the loop, and that was really important for them to not be left out. So I mentioned that we've been doing this for a little while. I want to move into kind of how it's going and then talk to you a little bit about our next steps before concluding. So we've officially kicked off the collective community in 2023. Prior to that, we had various working group communities. But since that time, management has very much made it clear to me that they've seen demonstrated positive impacts on program teams in all different shapes, whether it's day-to-day or actually at bigger milestone design reviews. And engagement of people is different. It's not just views. It's not just modifications. It's sharing. But softly, they're aligning really well to our goals. And I never shared our goals, but 3 of the top ones I'll share. So we wanted to make sure that we maximize value of existing knowledge. And that goal was so important to us because in our community, we want to stay innovative. We don't want to feel like we're just doing what someone else knows how to do. That just loses the creative fabric of who Lincoln Laboratory is. But we wanted to recognize that we can be more efficient if we just have a little bit of okayness with reuse. And so what we were seeing along that goal is that knowledge packets associated with review readiness have started to become utilized by program teams leading up to their review. We've talked about model-based design reviews. This feeds into that idea, but to see them actually be utilized, conversations occurring leading up to their reviews has been demonstrated. CAPEX I think Dara mentioned it earlier, you have these external documents that often are explicit, and then actually how you comply with them and use them and follow them is like the soft stuff that's not captured. And what we found here is that knowledge packets on a few of how do we apply some of our processes started to become known to authors of those process specs and actually enforce changes of those internal specifications, the ones that are actually top down. So CAPEX are driving changes to internal specifications. We wanted to make sure that we already had a knowledge sharing culture, but we wanted to promote it. We wanted to make it explicit as something we're trying to do better on. What we're seeing is that viewers of CAPEX, these are the consumers that things have been shared with them, they're becoming creators, right? They're asking questions from the champions, how do I get involved, how do I capture, and they're creating. That's that virtuous cycle that we all hope for, that you seed something and it starts to grow, and we're starting to see that. Additionally, people are searching to learn. So there's this common phrase at the laboratory where people are searching CAPEX to see if something exists. That's that seek to collectively know what we know first. It's working, and so it's all about how it's delivered to the community, not a top down, but more of a bottom up. This is for us, and it's showing that it's paying off. And in terms of knowledge integrity and general persistence, how do we sustain what we know? It's really interesting when we have peer reviews. That's when all those people that have experience come together, and they take information from their backpack of knowledge and their experience, and they share, right? And their recommendations. I observe, here's a recommendation. But to start to see what's happening is that CAPEX are being referenced as part of the SME interactions with program teams. New lessons that were never even discussed written down formally because it takes too much time were being brought up verbally, and comments are being made like, well, that would be a good CAPEX. And then the subject matter expert says, I'll write one. And I'm seeing it actually happen. So subject matter experts are creating as an output of this. And I think this is all just indicating that with the right type of framework around collective knowledge, not having to be perfect and having it be more accessible, is actually paying dividends on our side. So we don't plan to stop learning from our pilot. I actually call it a prototype, but since I'm a prototyping environment, it's a very redundant phrase, but we're prototyping this. We still are learning. Those practices have changed as we got more KM champions in play, and we're always seeking areas for improvement. And we work with the Oros team to share those. When I look at what we want to continue to do and really do better, it's making sure that the stakeholders really understand the value. I aligned CAPEX engagement around goals. That's good, but some stakeholders might want other types of metrics, dollars, saving time. It's hard to do that. And so we have to put some more effort into coming up with metrics that they might want. And we are in a multi-year transformation at our laboratory, moving to a fully digitally integrated workflow with our PLM system. And we want to make sure that we have a strategy to actually have knowledge enhanced feel to that. We want to make sure that it's included and not left behind and omitted, because those already existing digital threads that exist for relationships between parts and programs and people and design reviews exist elsewhere. And we want to make sure that we find a way to bring them together. So in summary, I hope you got a good feel that we did learn along the way. But our way of approaching a bottoms-up community, making that very explicit where everyone could contribute, actually started to help us get more user engagement. We did put effort into developing a taxonomy, but also made sure that it's streamlined, make sure it was usable, and got our community involved. We took time to find the right champions. We recognize it takes time to do that. We didn't tell them just figure out how to use this. We gave practices in place that would help them interact in a lean approach, and have identified that there's this big opportunity moving forward to find a way to get knowledge that we're talking about, experience-based knowledge, tied into our digital engineering ecosystem. So thank you.
Carl, on your slide, expand awareness, how did you communicate practical benefits of participating to creators and consumers?
Right, so the practical benefits were specific to the communities of practice, and then the KPACs being faster to share and find and compare. What would happen is we made sure that all the KM champions understood that as well. And so when they were trying to help new creators get involved, we wanted to make sure that they understood those values. So it was basically person to person. Usually the engagements happened after a presentation that we would give on our current status. That would facilitate a demand signal for people to want to learn more. So it's through communication, through a socialization, like a presentation that would get more people wanting to learn more. They'd reach out, we'd connect them with our subject matter experts, and go from there. We also circulate a technical advisory council newsletter, which speaks to some of these strategies as well, trying to highlight a quick sheet for how to get involved. So it's in a quarterly newsletter.
Excellent. Any other questions?
I beat you to it, Jeff, again. So when you talked, you were talking, I think it's in your previous or slide above, about people wanting to create knowledge or whatever. Are they creating that knowledge through the SMEs, or are you allowing them to write some kind of KPAC, and then are you going through the approval process with certain people? Like, has that been established? How revisions and things like that? Mm-hmm. Have you put that basis around there?
We have. So we set up ground rules for collective knowledge as not requiring a formal review, because we tried it and it didn't work. Like, people were busy. They say, I'll get to it when I get to it. Someone that's excited to contribute waits a month for someone to review it, and that person really wasn't the right person, and it's out of context, it's not fresh in their mind, it's not applicable. It wasn't lean, I'm using the air quotes. It didn't feel right, and we wanted to recognize that one of our goals is fostering our collective knowledge already, right? We already do it, but do it better. And that's why one of the practices that one of the structures we put in is instant publish, or basically no formal review. And we recognize that this is for people, right? This is moving towards a way to communicate and not be prescriptive in how you shall. So none of these is shoulds. This all has an opportunity with the digital engagement metrics of most use, most touch view, to be signals that pull good ideas out of this collective knowledge as candidates to be considered for promotion, which would then go through more of a formal review process and maybe be pushed down. But we didn't want to put that type of rigidity on it, because it just, too much impedance too fast didn't work for us. So we had open authorship. People can see work in process. They're educated on active knowledge. Part of our coaches bringing up our coaches is to have them understand vitality, right? That's a new thing that, green feels good, right? And so we break that down and try to communicate. We're trying to better understand what that means ourselves, because we don't have assessments in use heavily. So most of our vitality is speaking to when it was last modified, edited, views. And so we're utilizing that as a way to, talk about how the knowledge is living. But the practice of the best review is through reuse speaks to that. Don't try to be perfect here. Just get it out to be helpful, and let the natural engagement with another peer help you. And what I've seen already, because I'm an author of many of these myself, is that once it's out there and someone was trying to learn, you realize no matter how much you think you did a good job, like it could be made simpler. And we're definitely trying to use the AI writing assist to simplify, and try to make it easier for the writers.
And I just bring that up because, like I said, we had knowledge that was brought up, and it was sort of like what not to do. Don't do this. And this is what you get when you have like free, open authorship sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So like some kind of guidelines might be helpful when you start getting bigger. Don't duplicate, all that kind of stuff. Because as you grow, there might be, I got an idea, didn't look, create another one. Now you've got our issue with our anarchy.
Yeah, no, I understand. In fact, I'm excited about the AI offerings on learning opportunities. Right now, learning opportunities aren't being utilized really well because no one knows what to do with them. I don't have a workflow yet. There's a lot of things that Oros is still working on to make those better. And that will make them useful. I can see if you have 20,000 and you turn that on, it's like there's a lot of duplicates. And who's going to adjudicate? You have to have a structure in place to adjudicate and determine which ones stay and go and change. So, but what I can tell you is that I am seeing knowledge packets that are paired up with a proximity search that are very relevantly similar. And as a person who's managing knowledge and supporting that role, I'm able to contribute some energy towards those authors and getting them engaged and saying, hey, by the way, these really are similar. And in one case, one author said, I wrote this because of a necessity, but I recognize that person's redefining the process around how we use our primers. And so we basically made one obsolete or archived it, whatever that phrase is, and then we let the other one basically get promoted and continue on. And so the learning opportunity thing is a real benefit moving forward, but I think it's going to need a lot of people to understand who's shooting, get involved and why, and what's the value for them. All things for us to work on later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Carl, I just want to say thank you again for presenting this year. When I say that we have awesome partners in industry, I have a few people in mind, and I definitely have Carl and MIT in mind there. I have a question though. When you guys are a secretive organization. Like if you look at our logo or our logo salad, there's no MIT there because we can't. Does the secretive nature of your business hurt managing knowledge in secretive businesses can be difficult, or are you just fine with it because you self-contain?
Well, we have the same problems that everyone else has, where we have to make sure that data security is first and foremost preserved. And so one of the movements in our digital workflow with our PLM system is to address who has access to that program information. We're talking parts and design reviews and all that kind of stuff. And so there's people thinking about that problem. And right now we're not integrated with that yet. We're standalone. And on the knowledge management side, we are recognizing that we're not looking for sponsor related information. We're not looking for things that are going to cross boundaries. It's really what you naturally would be relevant across programs. And so I learned this on this program. There's some context about what happened. Maybe it wasn't the right team or some circumstance, but there's a learning. And if you can boil down something that you can pay it forward, that crosses the boundary and doesn't have all that program-specific information in it, I think that's what we're learning. Oros, gave us the characteristics of a good K-Pack. I constantly utilize it in conversations with people because as we get new creators, we really want to try to redact too much program-specific stuff, right? We really want it to be general. If it's too specific, it won't ever get used because how often are we going to do this system again? Who knows? So, but I think there's a huge value here that we deliver prototypes to our sponsors that often have a tech transfer application. Why can't we start to think about delivering knowledge that was gained along the way for them. And that is a pretty big idea of capturing certain learnings that could help them, because when you are another company trying to take the Lincoln prototype and mass produce it, you'd like to know a little bit about why certain things look the way they are, right? And that this is a huge opportunity for us to identify a gap and recognize that if it was captured in the context of the program work, it almost comes for free, the relationships, to pull through in your final technical data package.
On your continual improvement, you had a slide on that. Are there some specific things that you're doing to achieve that evolve part of the cycle? Are there some very explicit things you're doing to achieve that? Yes, that outer ring.
Mm-hmm. The outer ring?
Yes.
Yeah, so from our side, the evolve loop is evolving the knowledge, but also the process of managing the knowledge. And so an example here, when I gave it, basically when I answered Nicole's question, we basically didn't know what we didn't know. And when we started to do complex reviews and try to find SMEs, it just didn't work for us, and it didn't feel like it was aligned with our goals. So that was an opportunity to evolve. And so what happened on the knowledge management side is we had existing people involved with those reviews, and we had people that understood that was our path. So we pulled together what's working, what's not working, and got their buy-in to make a change. So we're not in this like fully like I can change it tomorrow type of architecture. We're making sure that we're getting alignment from people. So that's an example of evolve. In terms of formally doing that, our team's pretty small at this point. You know, it's not a huge team. We have to recognize that many of us are practitioners. Like, this is not our primary job, and so even for myself, I'm more of a get it done and work on programs person. So when we have a chance to evolve, I think it's naturally when we have to report to stakeholders, and we have to recognize we are not hitting our metrics or the things that we think that they want for return on investment.
Any additional questions? Carl, thank you.
Thank you.